Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to the session. My name is Kirillo, and let me just quickly share the deck that I have for you. There we go. So welcome to yet another exciting Beacon event. And as I mentioned, my name is Kirillo Bilavsky, and I'm the Business Analysis Office Lead at SoftServe. And today we're going to have a very interesting session, and I will talk about it and introduce our speaker in a moment. But before that, let's see if our chat works. I see already some highs in the chat. Hey, everyone. So let's put there, where are you joining us from? Like which city, which country, and maybe like what's the weather up there? For instance, I'm joining from Dnipro, Ukraine, and the weather treated us pretty good today. So we had a quite warm day, and before that there were a couple of rainy days, so it's extra nice to have it. Okay, I see we have people from Rivne, from Lviv, Ukraine, Ivano from Kiev, all good outside. That's nice to hear or to read. Kiev. Great weather, nice. It's raining in Krakow, okay. That's a shame, but hopefully things will get better. So we have also people from Dnipro and Bucharest, Romania. Sunny day, perfect. Also people from Kiev and Lviv. Gloomy, okay. Nice. Great. So that's great that our chat is working, and I think we will use it for communication throughout the session. So you will, if you have questions to the speaker, please use it to address it. And we also have some few more answers. Ternopil and Rzeszów. I hope I read it correctly. Poland. Spring rain. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you cannot have proper spring without the rain. That's for sure. Okay, so before we kick the session, I'd like to share with you a few messages. So first of all, this session is powered by SoftServe. And for those of you who are not aware of SoftServe, we're like a large technological company specializing in consultancy services and software development. We have like offices like in many locations all around the globe. And our business analysis practice was established back in 2012, and currently we're like around 370 business analysts, and we really like to share our knowledge, to share our best practices, and to communicate with you guys and to like expand our community further. And in terms of our services, it's of course a wide range of services, including expertise in big data, Internet of Things, cloud computing, DevOps, e-commerce. But the most popular word which is missing here is AI, artificial intelligence. That's all the way right now. Okay, so there you also see QR codes to our LinkedIn and Facebook pages. If you would like to like just link up with us, would be great. And I will move on. So today we will also like announce something about our courses, and we do have wide range of different business analysis courses, and this is the QR code. And maybe like if Marta, you can share a link also in the chat somewhere or under this video if you're watching that on YouTube in recording, so you can go and visit our webpage and see how many various different courses we have for you. Yeah. So I assume I've given enough time to scan the QR code if you are doing that. If not, then there is just right now a link in the chat for Marta. Thank you, Martin. And now it's time to introduce our speaker today. So I can proudly introduce my colleague today, Grzegorz Gabczynski. He's a business analysis cluster lead at SoftServe, head of volunteering at IABA Poland chapter, has 10 years of experience in IT, mostly around earth sciences, energy, and healthcare domains, and is a proud owner of several certificates, certificated product ownership analyst, and certified safe agilist. So yeah, Greg, if you wanna grab the screen And you ready to
Sure.
start? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, give me 1 second to share my presentation.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, everything works. So, welcome everyone. I'm really happy to be here. And today I'm gonna tell you something about planning from the business analysis perspective and planning horizons that can help with this planning. But let me maybe start with a frustration that many of us know well. So in agile environments, like for sure you know, business analysts are often pulled down into the job that we may not like. So story detail, backlog maintenance, clarification work, all this stuff. And of course, all of that matters, right? But it's not the whole job. And some people have difficulties with understanding that, but it's not the whole job. And today we will talk about it why. Because the real job is to connect what the team is building today with choices the organization is making at the strategic level. And also the strategic outcomes the organization is trying to achieve each and every day, then months, then years. And that's what this session is going to be about. So I want to give you a practical way to think about business analysis and BA contribution across these three planning horizons: strategy, initiative, and delivery. And these are not three different roles. This is important thing to be mentioned at the very beginning. These are not three different roles, but these are three views of the same thing. Okay, so my promise for the next hour, more or less hour, by the end of this webinar, I'd like you to be able to do three things. So first, see the model, understand the model and see it clearly, understand what the planning horizon actually is. Second, we'll go through each and every horizon and we will focus on the main questions, main decisions, artifacts, techniques, some practical examples, okay, that matter for each horizon. And third, we will connect all the horizons together so that our strategy is not completely abstract. Our initiative is not just, a feature funnel for the development team, and delivery is not only ticket administration. So this is not gonna be theory only session. This will be, I want it to be feel usable for you, like starting from tomorrow. So as we go, please keep asking yourself in your context. So which horizon gets the most attention in your organizations? Which horizons gets ignored maybe? And if this is your case also, where do your decision most often lose connection to value? Okay, let's keep asking yourself this question as a as a brain training. And today's webinar will be based on multiple resources provided by International Institute of Business Analysis, IIBA, uh, Babok or BA guide. This is the main one. Many of you probably know it. Additionally, Agile Extension, making this guide more aligned to Agile business analysis. And additionally, one more thing that I taken into consideration is Guide to Product Ownership Analysis. And I tried to combine all these three together to link all the techniques, practices from and perspectives from all these three to make sure we have a great visibility of the whole business analysis domain when it comes to planning on three horizons. And let me introduce maybe the planning horizon first in the simplest possible way. A planning horizon is a view of work with the right level of detail. I mean, right level of abstraction. You may hear also this term sometimes for the time frame. Right level of detail for the time frame. And my questions are therefore, of course, different. on each horizon, right? So at the strategy horizon, the question is this even worth doing? This is the basic question. On the other hand, at the initiative horizon, the question is more, what should we build next? And in what order should we build next? And the delivery horizon changes the perspective again. So the question becomes, what exactly do we build now? What are the next steps for shorter time frame? And as we move downward, time frames of course get shorter, detail level increases, and of course feedback due to that short time frame gets faster, much faster. But the important thing is that these horizons are nested, okay, not separated from each other. That's why strategy gives us context to initiative, and initiative gives us context to our delivery. But there is this feedback loop that I have mentioned initially, and delivery sends result back upward. We'll talk about it later today. And initiative sends result back upward to the strategy. This is extremely important. So how I perceive this in my projects, usually strategy protects the direction for the project, for the initiative. And the strategy, when we have this direction protected, we may go to initiative that shapes the sequence of actions. And of course, then delivery proves or disproves sometimes the chosen approach. That's where we can check if the chosen approach was the accurate one. And if you were to remember only one core idea from today, I would say this one is the most important one. So the strategy protects direction, initiatives then shapes the sequence of actions, and delivery proofs or disproves the chosen approach. This is the most important thing. But there is one thing that stays constant across all of these three horizons. Questions change from horizon to horizon, but the mindset does not. And the same agile analysis principles are still in place, no matter on which horizon you operate. So this is based, by the way, on product ownership analysis by IABA. And of course, we need to see the whole, not just the local requirement. That's obvious for many of us. Also, we need to think as a customer. This is typical product ownership perspective. We cannot think only as an internal stakeholder. We need to determine what's valuable, but also what is realistically doable. So we are somewhere between each and every time. Of course, we need to use examples, we need to collaborate closely, we need to avoid waste. As you see, these are like typical agile mindset rules that are still in play while operating on these three planning horizons. And I'm mentioning this as a reminder that these horizons are, let's say, these are not a permission structure. And what do I mean by this? I mean that strategy is not the only place where executives are allowed to think, right? And delivery is not where we switch off our business brain and just keep closing tickets. This is this cannot work this way. A strong agile business analyst should be able to hold the wider context. And by holding this wider context during all the conversations, it doesn't matter if the conversation is about portfolio funding or release scope or a single user story. The altitude changes, but the principles stay the same. So let's treat this as a short intro and basic information about the context that will help us jump more in detail of these horizons. And starting from the strategy horizon, because this is the top one in our hierarchy. At the strategy horizon, the BA contribution is not to model detailed requirements. This is not this step yet. It is more to help the organization decide whether a need is worth satisfying, whether it aligns with a strategy, and actually what evidence should drive our decisions, our investment decisions from the company perspective, right? So the time frame here can be short, like starting from 3 months up to multiple years. It all depends on the context, of course. But in general, this is this level of time frame. Decisions here, these are things like, should we start? Or maybe should we continue, reshape, change, cancel our initiative? This is this kind of decisions. Maybe should we reallocate our resources to a different place? This is kind of decisions to be made on the strategic level. And techniques from the practical perspective, the useful ones that you can use each and every day while working on the strategic level. So things like visioning, portfolio Kanban, value stream mapping, business cases. You probably know many of this. If no, we'll talk about it later a little bit. Things connected to KPIs, outcome measuring. This is what we should take into consideration while thinking about the strategy horizon. No matter if we are using BA Agile Extension, IIBA, POA Guide, any of this. These are the techniques that matter here. And the output of this horizon is not a giant specification pack. This is not this level again. It is more like enough clarity to make a good investment decision first, and enough direction for the initiative horizon that we'll talk about in a second to shape the products. In practice, this means broad sensing. I mean, multiple things to be taken into consideration: market shifts, customer expectations, what else? Internal capabilities, all the regulations, law regulations, government regulations, risks. Of course, this all matters, but also, again, back to what I talked about at the very beginning, evidence and feedback flowing back from delivery through initiative level. This is also something that we should take into consideration on the strategic level while thinking about anything from that perspective. And let's switch to practice. Let me make the strategy horizon concrete, because I mean, I think this is really powerful also on this, even on this simple example. So we have a signal, decision, and effect. The organization generated evidence early, and it was early enough to stop work on the initiative before money was burned. It started from the delivery team that showed that a planned product is no longer aligned with the market. That was a signal. And then there was a fast, quick decision that the leadership canceled the initiative 3 months instead of, protecting all of the sunk costs and making sure that we continue something that doesn't make any sense. As a result, we have positive result that budget and effort are redirected to things where this money can work much better. And of course, like, the reported saving is $1 million. But for me, the real lesson is not this number. The number doesn't matter. It can be different in different contexts, in different areas. The real lesson is this timing. Strategy should not wait for, post-mortem. If initiative and delivery are producing strong evidence that the bet we made is wrong, we should act somehow. Leadership should change the direction early. This is how it should work. This is constant communication within this framework between different horizons. This is how it should work. And this is why I like this simple sequence: signal, decision, effect, signal, decision, effect, from the delivery team up to the strategy of the organization. The result, the effect: better allocation of time, better allocation of money. From the practical perspective, like regarding your projects, maybe 3 practical habits. Define stop criteria early, because this will help you measure if the initiative is going into the right direction. If you have stop criteria, you can then double check against this criteria. Also combine your different sources of information: customer, delivery, commercial evidence, and measure outcomes rather than just milestones. This this can bring more information to your decision-making process. One more thing from my side that can also affect the strategy sometimes. So the cheapest initiative is often the one you stop before you become emotionally committed to. So if you are working on something from the very beginning, this becomes your child, I don't know, IT system, mobile app, whatever, psychologically, it's much more difficult to get rid of something like that. So just side comment that this can also happen, and you should be mentally prepared for that. And this is how the strategy horizon depicts the context. And knowing that context, we can switch to the initiative horizon. So once the organization believes an opportunity is real, we can move to this opportunity, to the initiative. And this is where strategy becomes, I would say, more shaped product, let's call it this way, or shaped solution approach from our perspective. The core question changes here to what should we build next and what should be the order, and the time frame is shorter than strategy, but still longer than delivery here, often around 1 to 3 months, although here also context matters. Uh, you can imagine, for example, in SAFe, PI planning, it is like quarterly planning, 3 months. This work in multiple agile frameworks, also in frameworks presented by International Institute of Business Analysis. These timeframes are pretty similar because this works this way. The decisions on the initiative level are more about different options, choices, feature sequence, our release plan. This is what we have on the initiative level that is much different to what we had on the strategy. Decisions are connected to MVP scope or on whether to continue, change, or cancel. Pretty similar thing like on the strategy level. But again, on the initiative, so smaller context here that we should cancel or continue, we have to think about this. And this is where BAs can bring more structure to the ambiguity. So this is the moment where we can tidy some things and put them in order, put them in sequence. This is for us quite often the highest level on which we can operate, especially if we are working as an external vendor. So here we compare options, we connect features to outcomes. Here we make trade-offs and we are making them visible. And also like from the delivery perspective, but on the initiative level, we sometimes help teams choose the smallest step, but the step that still brings business value. You probably heard this like multiple times about these increments, etc. So I won't be repeating this again here today. Techniques like impact mapping, user story mapping, MVP thinking, so like testing this hypothesis and backlog refinement, keeping backlog up to date, corresponding to the market circumstances. These are the techniques that are really useful here. Therefore, artifacts like product vision, product roadmap, release plans. You see, all of these are roadmaps, plans, things that are structured much more than on a strategic level. Minimum marketable feature, minimum marketable release. These are things that are taken into consideration. You see, this is the level where we think about building and releasing in appropriate moments. So this is completely different perspective than the strategic one. And again, in practice, classic initiative level failure mode this time, because like talking about failures is always interesting, especially if these are failures of other teams, not ours. So here we have great example of stakeholder imbalance. As you can see here in this example, expert voices were really, really overrepresented during the planning, right? So that made the feature conversation, of course, like more sophisticated. There were lots of fancy words, fancy verbiage used in the documentation, but it was also distorted. It distorted the sequence, and we had underrepresentation of the users here. So the results of these discussions were biased, and in other words, the team had the prioritization process, but the evidence feeding that process was biased. Therefore, even if the process was awesome, the results were not. But here, what matters is the recovery move. The team surfaced the issue, of course, like openly with no problems, no bad atmosphere here, discussed the problem, and rebalanced the backlog, rebalanced the feature order before launching, before putting it into delivery. This is a great initiative horizon level move because this should happen exactly on this level, not later on the delivery or after delivery. It should happen here because this is about shaping the bet before delivery locks it in. This is the main and most important step here and move to be made if needed. Three practical habits, three practical are things to be taken into consideration on this level. Refresh your stakeholder map on a regular basis because sometimes stakeholder may change, sometimes their attitude may change, and sometimes market circumstances impacting stakeholders, therefore impacting their attitude, may change. So keeping this up to date is a crucial thing. Another thing, rebalance evidence, not just opinions. Keep data, keep information, and keep asking one very hard question. What is enough for launch? What is enough to be delivered? Has enough value been delivered in the particular part? This question prevents the initiative horizon from turning just into the basket of features, even ordered, but like, please choose whatever, we don't care. No, this question keeps the backlog ordered. And this brings additional visibility for the delivery horizon that we will move to right now. And at the delivery horizon, analysis becomes highly concrete. This is like operational lever for many of you probably. Here the question is again different. It is what do we build now? Additionally, what will we learn from building and what will we learn from the solution built? And the time frame is short, 1 to 4 weeks. You can treat this like comparing to Scrum, like a sprint time frame here. Sometimes it's a bit longer, again, depending on the cadence, depending on the context, but usually 1 month is the longest time. And decisions here are more about stories, stories focus readiness, sequencing stories inside the sprint or flow, or how backlog items should change based on feedback that we have. This is where examples are in play. This is where BDD, Gherkin, Cucumber scenarios are in play. This is where we use spikes, reviews, and of course, retrospectives. This is where retrospectives and reviews become especially useful when it comes to this feedback that we have mentioned a few times already. And I want to emphasize one additional point here. Delivery analysis is not just clarification work. This may be perceived this way by some people, but that's not just clarification work. We are not only asking, can the team implement this item? Can the team implement this user story quickly? No, we are also asking what real example will make this concrete. Okay, what real example, what acceptance criteria matter here? And what value do we want from this increment? We have mentioned this again while discussing agile mindset, especially from POs, but I'm repeating this because this is important on this delivery level. So good delivery analysis protects the flow and improves learning at the same time. So as you see, these are all connected to the product, but from different perspectives. And many teams panic when a sprint review reveals, I don't know, a missed requirement or another need that have been raised, added by the business team. And I heard lots of this. I participated in multiple sprint demos, and I'd like to normalize that a little bit. I mean, if the team delivered what was agreed, and if the increment meets the acceptance criteria, like we agreed, the work should be still considered as done, and done like pretty well. New insights do not automatically mean the sprint has failed. This should not be treated this way, guys. So it means that the review worked, the review process worked because we got information about something important from the business perspective. That's why we have this short cadence on this delivery level. This important move is what happens next after that, because new learning becomes new backlog input, right? And this means it has been done well. In practice, three habits that can help with this are like demo from the user's point of view, because this will help you get additional information. And of course, there are systems where we cannot demo from the user's point of view. This is just the rule coming from, again, product ownership analysis by IBA that is dedicated especially for product companies. Of course, but if possible, if you are working on such project, please try to demo from the user point of view, from the business point of view, so that the feedback you can get from the business team will be much more valuable than just showing some technical stuff. Of course, sometimes showing like performance wins, that also matter, but it's a little bit different kind of feedback that you can get from this. Second, separate not built yet from built wrong. So then we have learning, which will not become blaming. This is extremely important and sometimes difficult to understand for people, technical, non-technical, different people. But of course, learning is not blaming. And this is how we can separate not built yet or from built wrong. Those are completely different problems to be discussed. And third, refine the backlog. Refine it immediately while the learning is fresh. If teams treat every review insight as, I don't know, evidence of failure, they'll start like hiding all of these uncertainties, all the problems, and that will kill the feedback loop. And this is what we want to avoid. We want to keep this feedback loop working and working in a good way. This is why this maintenance of good feedback, why it is important. And now we have discussed all three horizons. Let's connect them. Let us build the model. So strategy gives us a mission and also business strategy, initiative outcomes to be taken into consideration, right? And then initiative turns it into product vision, product level. So product vision, product roadmap. We discussed this already while discussing these levels, but here it is combined in one place. So you see that one is the result of the second one. Roadmap, release intent, release plan. This is what we have on the initiative level. And lower delivery, on this lower level of abstraction, delivery turns that into iteration level things, iteration goals, sprint goals, daily plans, working increments after the sprint is finished. This is what many of you probably know from your daily work on projects. But this is not the most important thing on this model. What is important is that we have context, of course, going downward, but on the other hand, we have evidence and feedback, feasibility, risks going upwards. So what I have mentioned multiple times today, we have something on the delivery to be taken into initiative level, to be taken into strategy level. So this is bidirectional communication each and every time. And when the signal is strong enough, strategy changes. It won't change like just because we want it to change. It will need to change based on the signal. Signal from delivery, signal from initiative level. This is how it works. If context only moves downward, like teams, of course, become compliant, right? But absolutely disconnected from the strategy. And this doesn't make any sense in managing project this way. On the other hand, if evidence never moves upward, strategy becomes just a fiction because we work completely separated from the strategy. Strategy has been invented 5 years ago and hasn't been changed since that time. So the artifacts matter, but I would say only as conversation tools. So a roadmap or release plan or backlog, these are useful when they keep the conversation aligned across horizons. And this is what we should use these artifacts for. If we create artifacts just to be, that's not good enough goal for the artifact to be created. The goal is to keep horizons connected to each other and still nested. And I would like to focus a little bit on the Babok guide and how it corresponds to what we depicted, how it corresponds to the strategic initiative delivery horizon. Three horizons do not replace the Babok guide. Three horizons show different perspective, and I would say they organize how Babok works. They organize Babok at different altitudes of planning from that planning perspective. At the strategy horizon, strategy analysis is very visible, like current state, future state, of course, risks, change strategy. These are things, typical things from Babok that are connected. Even like this is strategy analysis. So the name says. At the initiative horizon, we see strong use of requirements analysis, design definition, because here we think more about the product itself. We see here potential value assessment, prioritization, many of this, change assessment, all this stuff. And at the delivery horizon, we see elicitation, clarification, validation, verification, measurement, backlog refinement, all this stuff. So that these are all connected to different planning perspectives that we have discussed before. Think of these horizons more as a practical lens, let's say this way, not just a substitute of Babok for sure, right? Not this way. In real life, a single initiative will touch multiple knowledge areas at the same time. This is natural. And the benefit of the horizon model is that it helps us ask the right question at the right altitude. This is this benefit of having this divided into horizons. So we do this horizon planning instead of treating, every problem like a requirement details problem. If we use the wrong level of detail, the wrong level of abstraction while discussing with stakeholders, we won't get information from them. They will not listen to us because the level of abstraction is too high, and like they can feel that you are not attentive to details, or on the other hand, they can perceive you as too vague, that what you're talking to them is too generic, and they will not listen to you because you are not at the appropriate level of details to discuss, for example, some delivery items. So this is how Babok shows up inside these three horizons. But on the other hand, product ownership analysis adds something from that product ownership perspective. And this is something really useful. I have especially focused here on multiple perspective of the product ownership analyst, because product guide to product ownership analysis widens the role beyond backlog management. So in a product-centric environment, product work stretches across all this horizon, and this is natural. But this is why the guide talks about different perspectives, I would say, such as product strategies. The product owner has to be a product strategist and value driver on the strategy level. This is how Guide to POA describes this. At the same time, the same person has to be customer advocate and design partner on the initiative level. These are terms like from that guide, word to word. And at the same time, these are not three different people. Product owner has to be team vanguard and learning champion on the delivery level. Of course, like this sounds a little bit funny sometimes, learning champion, team vanguard. I understand. But in general, this is corresponding to what we have discussed. It corresponds to constant learning, to retro, and to feedback loops. So these are the capabilities that the good product ownership needs. If your like organization is asking analysts to support POs as proxy POs or BAs within the development team supporting POs, or like if you're asked to take any POA responsibilities, that is not always role confusion. It quite often reflects the fact that the skill sets overlap, but they overlap in a really practical way, I would say. So it makes sense to be aware how a guide to product ownership analysis also makes a perspective on these three planning horizons. And if you're thinking, okay, but all that I heard, this is useful, but what do I actually use? So I have prepared a minimum viable toolkit for you, also divided by horizon. So like you can treat this slide as a starter kit for you, let's say. And at the strategy horizon, begin with techniques that clarify direction, direction and portfolio choices, I would say. So things like visioning, portfolio Kanban, value stream mapping, these are things to be taken into consideration, if not into use, on the strategic level. At the same time, at the initiative horizon, use techniques that connect outcomes to feature sequence, impact mapping, story mapping, testing hypothesis via MVP. This is what matters there. And at the delivery horizon, use techniques that more turn ambiguity into shared understanding, plus this rapid learning that we have already spoke about. So examples and scenarios from behavior-driven development, spikes, additionally for this learning, reviews, retrospectives. This is what can work well on the delivery horizon. Do not try to build a huge toolkit, because you remember that previous slides with multiple techniques. Of course, if you dive deeper into these materials, into these resources, you will find lots of different techniques, but do not start with building the huge toolkit, because this won't work in a nutshell. Build a small but reliable toolkit to be used for sure. A small set of techniques used like consistently. This is much more important and much more valuable than, a long list of methods that are not in use and that nobody really applies. Again, it's perfect art, but it's only art. Technique choice, of course, it will be like always contextual, depending on your circumstances, on your projects, but consistency creates clarity. So at least on this meta level of choosing the tool, you will be consistent. And a few more words again about failures and about anti-patterns, because this is always interesting, as I said. So the anti-patterns you see right now are useful, And in general, anti-patterns are useful because almost every organization, and I can bet, or maybe not, but I can bet, let's say, that each organization will recognize at least one of these anti-patterns. Frozen strategy, or the backlog that keeps growing without any validation, revalidation, right? Or the loudest stakeholder always winning during the discussion. This can also happen sometimes. Or learning delayed until launch, until release. Or review feedback that is treated always as failure. These are these are different anti-patterns that exist, and like it's true. But I would not present this as moral failings. They are more usually symptoms of staying stuck in one horizon for too long. This is how I perceive this from this symptoms perspective. Strategy will become static, if not rediscussed frequently. Initiatives, on the other hand, can become really political, sharing things across teams, adding team members to teams, thinking about how much money can we get from additional team. This is when initiative can become political. And delivery can become really easily, and this is something that I observe sometimes, unfortunately, just ticket administration. So when you see any of these patterns, ask the horizon question. Again, are we making a strategy decision with delivery level detail? Does it make sense? Sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes it exists in your organization, but it doesn't make sense. Or another question, are we forcing delivery teams to compensate for missing initiative choices? This can also happen sometimes. Or another question, are we treating review learning as a defect because we expected certainty too early? This is also possible. Most of the time, the real issue is not bad intent. Of course, I assume that people are good in general, and it's just the wrong horizon on which we operate. And we ask wrong questions on this wrong horizon. So, what do you think, and what are kind of questions that we should ask? I think that, and this is something that I recommend in the end, because like this is the easiest way to improve horizon thinking, improving the questions. This will improve automatically the way we think on the horizon level. So at the strategy level, ask which business outcome are we protecting, or which business outcome are we growing? What evidence would tell us to stop or pivot or to invest more resources, more money into something? And which portfolio dependencies matter right now? What are the dependencies that were important 5 weeks ago, but maybe are not important anymore, if any? At the initiative level, at the initiative horizon, please ask which option or sequence best fits value plus constraints. This is clear, I think. What is the next smallest release that proves that hypothesis? Again, this we talked about this, but this is valid question, the basic one to be asked on the initiative level. And how will we know the need is satisfied? How will we check? How will we evaluate our solution? Not just to check, okay, it's on prod, finished, but how can we evaluate that the solution has been not just delivered, but that the need that was behind that solution, that the need has been satisfied? How will we know that? And on the delivery level, what example makes this item concrete? What feedback will we collect this cycle, and what should change in a backlog because of what we learned? These are three questions on the delivery level also to be asked to make sure this corresponds to what is stated on parent levels. These questions move the conversations. I perceive this as moving conversations really from output conversation to value conversation, and also from assumption to evidence. So we have then data, we have information and informed decision not only our assumptions, because we have asked the right question at the very beginning. And if you want a simple experiment, try to add one question. Choose one question, try to add one question from each column into your team's regular meeting, sprint call, whatever, next week. Try one question and see what will happen. Okay, and this is like all these questions together with basic toolkit that we discussed. This is something that you can use on daily basis, on weekly basis. We discussed quarters for strategy levels, so on quarterly basis sometimes. But I understand many of the things that we discussed today you might be not familiar with yet, because these are like things from IIBA, and you might be not familiar with that IIBA, or you are on a basic level. And therefore, if you want to structure your Babok knowledge in a short and really efficient way, or if you need any useful tips, tricks for memorizing huge amount of information, because there are huge amount of information there in all of these resources, absolutely. Or maybe you'd like to train exam-like questions, typically for the exam are under the guidance of certified trainers. This is the course for you if you need any professional support with the exam application process, or you just need some amount of PD hours additionally required for IABA certification. This is the training for you to join. It starts in May, and you are really welcome to join that training to make sure you understand also that part well. From my side, that would be all like regarding me speaking to you in a lecture format, but we have reserved some time for your questions and answers, if any, and I will be happy to discuss with you more.
Thank you so much, Grzegorz. We actually do have quite a lot of questions. We have 5 question submissions, and I think the first one even has a couple of questions in it. So, what would be the best? Should I read it to you, or you can, follow up on your own? It's there in Q&A
Yeah,
box.
I have opened the Q&A part, so we can go one by one, and I'll be reading the questions so that I can see this also. It will be easier, especially having in mind that a few of them are quite long. So it will be good to have preview. Question 1. To what extent does what we are supposed to focus on during each horizon depend on us business analysts? Actually, my perception of this is that this is not only responsibility of business analysts to make sure that the project team, development team, but by project team, I don't mean only developers, testers, BA, but all the people that have any interest in the project, in the products. It's not only the BA responsibility to organize that team. In general, it is the responsibility of the company that is creating this project, right? But of course, if there is responsibility of everybody, then it becomes responsibility of nobody. So in practice, quite often, business analysts or product ownership analysts or agile business analysts, however we call them, they become not only requirements engineers, people responsible for requirement specification, but they become also consultants on that meta level, on that project process perspective. Therefore, in many projects, this will be experienced business analyst responsible for modeling processes and suggesting approaches, even if the BA is not the decision maker, suggesting approaches for the product management in the most efficient way. That's why I would say yes and no when you asked about this responsibility and ownership of that process. Yes and no, quite often yes, but in a little bit different role. Okay. Follow up. To what extent should we allow our decisions, outputs, and even time frame for either horizon to be influenced by stakeholders based on company, client, politics, where we might want to leave out some of our decision suggestions, artifacts. Long question. Of course, each and every decision is impacted by multiple factors, both internal and external, and multiple stakeholders, both internal and external. And I wouldn't say the business analyst should become the decision maker for many of this. Because when you join the project, you are rarely, especially while being external vendor to another company, you are rarely in a role where you can make the particular decision regarding future of the product, future of the project. So here again, I would perceive it more as a role of consultant, helping guide through different possible ways in this chaos and helping to provide all pros and cons and all information so that the decision to be made, that will be made by business stakeholders will be informed and decision based on data. But there will be, of course, like decisions regarding this toolkit, decisions regarding artifacts. And here I feel it as a really powerful role that the BA can choose what to suggest in the particular scenario. Because it depends on your experience. The client will trust you. The client will base on your experience when it comes to the methodology to be used. Of course, you can suggest multiple if multiple are correct and there is no simple answer. But I would treat this more as sometimes as a patient and doctor. So the patient comes with some symptoms, the patient comes with some information, the more information, the better. But that's the doctor that will suggest treatment and any pills, whatever is needed. Sometimes, if there are if there are multiple ways of treatment possible, doctor will suggest multiple ways of treatment and the patient will need to choose which way they want to go. Therefore, I hope I have answered the question. But yeah, I think this is not the question that we can answer with yes or no. And if I didn't, like, please let me know on chat or narrow the part that we need to discuss more in detail. At what point do these artifacts, vision, roadmap, release plan actually drive decision? And when do they just document them? That's a really, really good question because this puts this artifact somewhere on the timeline. So we have an artifact created and then decision, or maybe we have first decision and then artifact to document that decision. And I would say the first one is incorrect and the second one is incorrect. Or another way, the first one is correct and the second one is correct too. Because I perceive all of these artifacts as living organisms. I mean, you start creating this as early as possible, as early as you have some data, some information to be put into the structured way. But after that, the situation changes, as we discussed. We have some feedback from delivery, we have some feedback from our customers, we have this feedback going back to initiative, going back to strategy. Therefore, artifacts on each and every level will need to evaluate. I mean, they will need to be changed each and every time the situation changes. The situation in the market, the situation in a team, in a company, like there are lots of factors, internal and external, again, that can influence our artifacts. So I wouldn't say artifacts are to document decision. I mean, somehow they do, because like some decisions have been made, then we put this into our artifact. I would say that artifact can visualize decision, and at the same time, artifact can, by visualizing the decision and information that we have so far, can bring inputs to the next decisions and to the next activities to be made. So this is how I perceive these artifacts in the whole life cycle of the product and BA's artifacts. If we say, what should we build next? Who owns deciding we shouldn't build anything? The quickest answer will be sponsor, because somebody that is responsible for the whole initiative. But again, it depends on a company. Scenario one, you are working as an external vendor to the product company. Of course, it's rarely, almost never, external vendor responsible for this kind of decisions. This is their business. You are just hired to do things, and they're making these decisions. Of course, this can be informed decisions, but it's on them. If this is product company, scenario two, the situation looks a little bit differently, because this is the same team working on the initiative and the same team that is responsible for making decisions. But again, in reality, it's not the team responsible for the decision. It's like one person or the committee, like no board of directors. It depends on a company, but in general, it's the business side of the product rather than engineering side. Despite the fact that these two sides closely work with each other, and sometimes like engineering voice is natural within this business context. Okay, the next question. At which point in this flow do we most often lose the original intent from the strategy? There is no one point on which you can lose the original intent. You can lose it small step by step, like evolutionary, throughout the whole communication chain, throughout the whole product backlog management chain, and throughout the whole lack of feedback from lower levels. So these are small steps, small chunks added to each other that result in the end with losing or making it so different, completely different, so different that it's not even similar to the original intent at the beginning. But it rarely happens like change to 108 degrees, because this will be easily observable, and therefore we can avoid this. No, this usually happens in a way that step by step we are losing a broader picture up to delivery, up to delivery, up to delivery, and then we build something that is less connected to the original intent. But who is responsible for that, therefore? Everybody and nobody. That's why I'm mentioning that this feedback loop and maintaining a feedback loop from level to level, from horizon to horizon is so important. Okay, let's switch to the next question. Can you share the real case where one of these tools made a difference to the final outcome? Sure. So there are many, and like I will share the case where, for example, we have created product roadmap. And the interesting fact is that the product roadmap with a time dimension that was added to that roadmap was the first time decision makers thought about time dimension. Previously, without having this visualized, we had a list of things. This list was even prioritized. They have used fancy prioritization conventions. It was Moscow or something else, but in general, it was like really nice, really nice. But nowhere we found time dimension. And for us, like development team, for me as a business analyst there, it was natural that we should also take this time dimension into consideration while thinking about a release plan. And adding this dimension plus estimation process plus putting everything on that roadmap resulted in a situation that some items have been removed from the backlog, not because these were not important per se, but because these were not important in the time horizon in which there was a possibility to deliver them. So this doability have been tested, have been checked by adding this time dimension to our roadmap. Therefore, something that the business team perceived really, really important, that the epic that they perceived as important to get new clients and to exist on another market, it was in like, let's say, first quarter of or first 2 quarters of the year. At that time, it was crucial. But then later, when we have added this time dimension and all the dependencies, it turned out to be doable only in the end of year, or maybe even the beginning of the next year, due to some dependencies and blockers. And at that time, that epic was absolutely useless because business circumstances have changed so much that this was not really useful, not really needed, spending even 1 week on that. So this is what brought additional factor into decision-making process for these decision makers. This is only one of the examples, but this depicts well that even small artifact, nothing extraordinary. It's not a rocket science to add another axis, right? But this helped like shift the thinking process and decision making process. And I think the last question that we have in this Q&A session is, what usually prevents teams from canceling early, even when the evidence is clear? This is a tricky question, and I have mentioned one of these factors, to be honest, earlier today, and I have mentioned this on purpose because I saw it in practice that it prevents teams from canceling early, even if the evidence is clear. So, especially for product companies or for companies working with startups or startups in particular, if you are building the product and you spend your private money on that product and you spend lots of late evenings on that product, this makes you mentally, psychologically connected closely to that thing. It doesn't matter if this is physical thing or application. Uh, you have spent so many time and you have put so many emotions into that it makes your decision-making process automatically biased. And I wouldn't say you can get rid of these emotions because these are needed, like for visionary people, inventors, people working in startups. This type of thinking, this is needed, crucial. But at the same time, you have to be aware that this can impact the decisions you make, and this can put you in a situation where you don't want to stop. You are ignoring clear evidence and facts because you have invested so much into that initiative. Money, emotions, time. You have like devoted other areas of your life for that particular product. And I would say that this is one of the most important things to be taken into consideration while thinking what can block us from canceling early and shifting this learning left, left, left when the result is we should cancel. Okay, I think we have answered all the questions. Kirilla, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like we are
You're
done.
absolutely correct. Thank you for covering all the questions, and great thanks to our audience for submitting those questions. I especially like the last one
Yeah.
from this queue. All right, I think there are no more questions, so I guess we can wrap up the session. So again, thank you so much, Gregor, for doing the session. It was quite interesting and insightful, and as you see, we had quite a lot of questions from the audience, which is also a factor. So thank you all for being with us today. Have a great evening and hope to see you at